Speed changes everything. You don't have to be an expert coach to understand that sprinters swim differently than distance swimmers, even when they're swimming the same stroke. So what we're going to take a look at is what those differences are, help you understand why these differences occur so you can better equip your swimmers with the skills necessary to be successful over the race distances of their choice. Hi everyone, Andrew here, helping you help your swimmers get faster. And in this video, we're going to discuss freestyle and the differences between sprint freestyle and distance freestyle and what they look like. There are four main differences that tend to show up. And while we'll talk about them in isolation, they all kind of work together as one big package. And so it's useful to understand that they all kind of work together. However, for the purposes of this video, we're going to talk about them separately and the specific changes that happen in each of those segments. The first difference is how the pull is executed. The second difference is how the kick is executed. The third difference is how the arm recoveries are executed. And then the last difference is the timing of the stroke in general. Let's check it out. So even though the principles are the same, the specific application of how swimmers create propulsion with the arms is going to be different when they're swimming a 1,500 meter swim versus a 50 meter swim. So if we watch here, what distance swimmers tend to do, and again, there are exceptions, we're going to just follow the general rule here, is that they set up the stroke early, they create a really high elbow, they get that forearm facing backwards as early as they can, and they kind of pull straight back, and they're not very deep in the back of the stroke. So what they do here is they get a really good position early, a really high position early, and then they pull straight back and they exit the water without getting particularly deep through the pull. So the pull is going to be shallower, it's going to be effective earlier, and it's not going to require quite as much force because it's shallower and more bent. It's a stroke that's built for efficiency, and because swimmers need to be efficient over 1,500 meters, that's the stroke that they tend to pick. It tends to be shallower, it tends to be more bent, and it tends to be focused on the front half of the stroke and a little bit less on the back half of the stroke. Again, and the reason swimmers choose that is because of the demands of their event. Efficiency over speed, but they still need to be able to swim pretty fast, and this stroke allows for really great speed, but it's a lot more efficient. In contrast, our sprinters are a lot more focused on speed rather than efficiency. And so what we'll see here is there's no hesitation in the front of the stroke like we saw with the distance swimmer, and the arm is going to get a little bit deeper, and he's not going to get quite the same orientation of the arm facing backwards early in the stroke. But what you watch here is it gets much deeper, and he holds that position through the back of the stroke a lot longer. So if we watch this right arm here, see how deep it is and see how long it's staying deep. He's keeping that in that position a lot longer. And so this allows him to take faster strokes. It allows him to hold a lot of water in the back of the stroke where he can really move the arms fast. And he doesn't have to take his time to set up the stroke. So maybe he loses a little bit in the front, but he makes up for it a lot in the back. And again, because the arms are going to be deeper, that's going to create more force, but it's going to require more energy. However, he's only swimming for 20-something seconds, and so he doesn't care about how much energy it takes. He only cares about how fast it allows him to go. So because there's different demands, we have different strategies. Principles are still the same: big surface area, long range of motion, and acceleration, but they show up in different ways. Here, he's not wasting any time. He's not getting into a perfect position. He's getting in a good enough position. And then in the back of the stroke, he's going to hold a ton of water and be really effective holding throughout the entire stroke. And that's going to allow him to create more speed and do so in a way that can be performed at a higher stroke rate. So different strategy based upon different demands. Now, when it comes to kicking, what you'll see here is a lot less of an aggressive kick. He's kind of using a two-beat kick with some little flutters in between. It's a lot less aggressive than what you see in a sprint. And the reason is the legs use a ton of energy, but they don't create a ton of speed, especially relative to the upper body. And so while they matter, while they contribute, it's not as efficient use of energy than focusing on the arms. The sprinter, of course, doesn't care about efficiency, so he's going to use the legs as much as possible. Another thing is that the pull tends to make the hips sink. And so in the beginning of the pull, swimmers press down, that tends to sink the hips. And so the kick can counteract that a little bit. However, in distance swimming, the stroke frequency is a lot less. And so the kick frequency can be less because it doesn't have to counteract as frequent of an arm pull, which it doesn't have as frequent of a leg sinking effect. So for all those reasons, swimmers can be a lot less aggressive with the kick. And even swimmers that do kick more consistently, that do have a 6-beat kick, it tends to be a lot smoother than you would see in a sprint. And so swimmers are conserving energy. They still have an effective kick. You can see that big snap of the leg, the straight leg recovery. However, it's just not going to be as aggressive as a sprint because it doesn't need to be. Now with our sprinter here, he's going all in on the legs. You can see he's driving the legs at full capacity. he's kicking as fast as he can, and he's kicking as hard as he can. One, it's going to add more propulsion, and he doesn't care how much energy it takes because he's not going to run out of energy. He's only going to run out of speed if he doesn't use his legs. Second thing is the arms are working a lot harder. They're creating a lot more propulsion, and they're creating a lot more propulsion a lot more frequently. So the legs need to be there to help keep the hips up as he moves through the water. And so again, it's going to be the same basic strategy. The kick is basically the same. It's just going to happen much more frequently because he doesn't care about energy conservation. All he cares about getting is as much speed in as little time as possible, and he doesn't care how much energy that takes because he's not going to run out of energy, but he might swim too slow. So the frequency of the kick tends to be different. It's not always different, but the intensity of the kick is always different. It's much more aggressive. It's much faster when swimmers are trying to go faster because the arms are moving faster. The legs have to move faster to keep up with the arms. So same basic stroke, different intention based upon different demands. Next up is the arm recovery. And so in a distance event, the arm recoveries tend to be more bent, they tend to be more fluid, and they tend to be less relaxed. And of course, the arms are moving slower, so the arm recoveries tend to be slower as well. And it's the same basic idea. Swimmers are not trying to maximize their speed, they're trying to optimize their speed, and they're trying to optimize how much energy they use, trying to keep it as low as possible while going as fast as possible. And so the more that the arms can swing effortlessly over the surface, the more swimmers can conserve energy, and they're not going to run out of gas in a way that's completely unnecessary and not helping them achieve their goals. So a lot more fluid, there's a lot more elbow bend, and it just happens a lot more naturally. Now in terms of sprints, they're swinging their arms a lot faster, a lot harder, they're a lot straighter, and they're going as fast as they can. And the reason for that is because one, they don't have any time to waste. Two, they're not worried about burning energy up. And three, they need to get the arms in position to create propulsion as fast as they can. And so if they swing the arm over the surface and into the water, it's going to drop down into a position that allows them to create propulsion immediately. They don't have to worry about placing the arm. They can just swing it into position, and that allows them to be in position to create a really effective pull. And so this is one of those examples where all the parts of the stroke start to add up and interact, because if swimmers swing their arm faster, they can get into position faster. And again, it's all about maximizing speed as opposed to maximizing efficiency. So straighter arms in general, a lot more ballistic and a lot more effortful in terms of how they swing over the surface and into the water. The last piece to consider is timing. And so what you'll see here is the arms both end up in front of the shoulders at the same time. So his left arm is still pulling, his right arm is entering, and so the arms are overlapping in the front of the stroke. And so that's going to be a lot more efficient because one, he's not going to be pulling continuously, and he's going to give more rest, more time between arm strokes. So he's going to be pulling right here on the left arm, and he's not going to start pulling until right there on the right arm. So there's more space in between the strokes. It allows for more efficiency. It allows for more sustained speed, and that allows them to create speed for longer periods of time and ultimately hold their speed for longer periods of time. Now, if we watch the sprinter, the arms are moving in opposition. So if we watch the right arm here, he's still pulling, and then left arm is already pulling. And so then it switches sides. Right arm is in the water as the left arm finishes pulling. As soon as one arm stops pulling, the other arm is already creating propulsion, and that happens over and over again. So left arm is still creating propulsion, right arm starts creating propulsion. Right arm is finishing propulsion, left arm is already creating propulsion. And so it allows for much more continuous speed, much higher speed because there's no space in between the strokes. You get constant and continuous propulsion, and that's going to help them create more speed because there's no point where they're slowing down because they've always got their arms interacting with the water and they always have their arms creating propulsion. The last issue, and another timing issue, is the timing of the arms and the rotation. So if we watch here, we'll watch the pulling arm. So as the pull gets about halfway through, he's flat to the water, and then he rotates through on that side as he pulls. And so again, when he gets to the middle of the pull, he's flat and then rotates through the back of the stroke. That's what's going to happen every time he pulls. And so pull, he's flat and then rotates through. That's going to happen with every stroke. Same thing, he's flat here on the other side and then rotates through. He's flat here and then he rotates through. That's going to be how the swimmers are going to execute the pull. If we watch the sprinter here, it's the same thing, even though it's happening at high speed. So right here, he's flat, the arm's under the body, and then he rotates through. The left arm, he's flat here, and then rotates through. It's not as much rotation, but it still happens. Flat right there, and then rotates through, and then flat right there, and then rotates through. So the timing of the pull itself doesn't change when swimmers are going really fast and really slow. As swimmers pull, they get flat to the water and then they rotate through as they finish the pull. That's always the same. What happens a little bit differently is the timing of the rotation through the recovery. We'll go back to our distance swimmer and check that out. Now let's watch from the view of the recovering arm. And so what happens is the right arm enters and then he rotates. The left arm enters and then he really rotates. The right arm enters and then he really rotates. And the left arm enters and then he really rotates. And again, that allows him to be more patient in the front. It allows him to slow things down. It allows him to take more time to set up the stroke, and that's all in the interest of efficiency. Again, 1,500 meters, the goal is efficiency and speed, not just speed. So again, enter and then rotate, enter and then rotate, enter and then rotate. That allows him to slow things down, be more efficient, so he can hold his speed throughout the entire race. Now our sprinter fin, as soon as his hand enters the water, he has already rotated. He's already on that side. Now when he enters on the right, he's at full rotation. And then when he enters on the left, he's at full rotation. On the right, full rotation. And so the difference here is that swimmers in sprints don't have any time to waste. So they have to enter the water in position. They can't enter the water and then get into position. So he enters rotated right there. And then he enters rotated right there so that he can be in position to create propulsion as soon as possible without any delay. Is that more difficult? Yeah. Does it take more energy? Yeah, but he doesn't care because he's just trying to get to the other side of the pool as fast as he can. So there's differences in rotation timing in terms of the recovery and where the rotation is when the hand enters. It's going to be enter and then rotate with distance, and then it's going to be, and the swimmer's going to be already rotated when the hand enters in the sprints. And again, those differences all come down to energy demands and race demands. Swimmers don't care how much energy they burn in the sprints, but they care about their speed. Distance swimmers care about their speed, but they care more about energy conservation because they have to be able to finish the race. And so they're trying to go as fast as possible with as little effort as possible, whereas sprinters are just trying to go as fast as possible. So they use different strategies, even though the principles are the same in order to go fast. If you want to learn more about rotation timing and freestyle, check out the video above.